Hello, I'm an old fart, and I have a guilty pleasure. I like knives. I'm not an expert or an official representative of anybody. I just like knives, and I have a collection of small folding pocket knives that you've been wandering through with me for a little over a year now. Kind of a COVID virtual visit shut-in project, and I appreciate the company. Today we are going to have a look at this neat little knife. This is a recent acquisition that I really like. This is a Pena Micro Apache. Well, a little background. I don't have any custom knives. I can't afford them and they're hard to get. But if I were to focus on getting custom knives, I'd probably start with some of the Pena knives. I really like the looks of his work. But I don't have any Pena customs. And fortunately, he has done what he calls his X series, which is his designs, but then manufactured in production facilities in China and making them more accessible. They're still not widely available, but at least they're within reach of a sort of casual collector. I have several Pena X series knives, and I am very impressed. So when this one came out, it seemed to be everything I like in a Pena, but tiny, like small, and I like small knives, so that was exciting. So I ordered one, and here it is. And I must say, I think this is probably the nicest mechanism of any of the Pena knives that I have, and I like them all. But this one is just a real little jewel. So formally, this is a Pena X Series Micro Apache. Those are available in a few scale finishes, and this is the natural canvas micarta. Mechanism, as you just saw, it's a flipper. It's a front flipper. Two possible actions. You can flip it with a forefinger on the end here, and you can also flip it with a thumb across the end, sort of the Bic lighter flick. I prefer the forefinger flick on this knife just because it works so well, and it leaves me much more firmly in control of the knife. I'm always afraid with the thumb flip that I'm going to fling the knife at myself. In fact, I've done that with another knife. It is a frame lock knife. Now, they call it a frame lock, and I will respect their terminology. I think technically it might be properly called a bolster lock because most of the lock bar is under the scales. Now, I don't know, does all of the lock bar have to be under the scales before it's a bolster lock? So anyway, they call it a frame lock. Let's stick with that. And it's running on ceramic bearings and is very smooth and pleasant. Well, let's talk about the size, since that's really the thing for this knife. This knife is small. Open, it's only 127 millimeters, which, to use our international standard scale, is 0.7 pocket calculators. That's small. Most of the knives in my collection come in at around 0.9 or 1.0, some even a little more than a pocket calculator. So that's small if you have seen my typical knives. Comparing it to some other things, it's going to reinforce that message. It's small. The Mini Griptilian, my usual standard for mid-size knife, actually looks big in comparison to this thing. More sensible comparison might be some other Pena knives. So there's the Pena Dogleg Jack, which, as you can see, the Micro Apache is considerably smaller, like sort of 2/3 the size. If I try to find some knives that are the same size-ish, I get a couple here. It is smaller than a Benchmade Megumi, although it's getting into that size range. And it's smaller than an Almar Ultralight. And yet, both of these knives are compromised. They suffer from being small. This one has a bit of blade play and a bit of lock issue. I mean, it's a nice knife, but it definitely does have some compromises in it. And this one, although it's very small and very light, actually has a kind of a flimsy feel because of its smallness and lightness. Not the Apache. This is sturdy, close fit, well done mechanism. It just doesn't feel like a compromise in any way. The only thing that's close to it, and even smaller, is the Spyderco McBee, which I acquired as a gift from a friend just recently, which is just too stupidly small. But both of these share that they are serious knives with really good mechanisms and close tolerances, and are just not compromises in any way. So that's pretty darn impressive. The weight, well, being small, it's light. That's 54 grams, which is light, but it's not flimsy light. It feels like about the right amount of weight for something that size. It may feel a little heavy, actually, for something that size. But anyway, 54 grams is certainly light. The blade is a lovely blade. It's 2 inches long to switch temporarily to imperial measures, because 3 inches is magic in some place, so this is way under the magic 2-inch mark. It's M390 steel, which is a wonderful steel. Still my favorite steel, because I haven't had a chance to fall in love with some of the more modern steels like MagnaCut yet. They call the blade shape a reverse tanto. And I guess it is very similar to the shape of the Benchmade 940, which they call a reverse tanto. I don't really know what makes a blade a reverse tanto, but anyway, this is quite a useful blade shape for a knife this small. It has a good long, almost straight cutting edge, and a point which is really good for scoring, so a useful utility shape. And there is something I appreciate. There's quite a large sharpening choil there, so no danger of scuffing the corners while sharpening. So all in all, a great blade. The body is a titanium frame with micarta scales, and I'm going to come back in a moment to the fit and finish, which is great. The clip is a milled titanium clip. It's shallow carry. There you can see the shallowness. And it is one side only. No reason why it couldn't have mounting options on the other side, but it doesn't. Lanyard, no. There's no lanyard hole, no lanyard pin, really no way to affix a lanyard. And why would you on a knife this small? So, and I'll comment on ambidextrositude. No, but maybe that's not so serious. As a front flip, sure. I mean, the front flip is fully ambidextrous. I don't know that I can do it, but I think left-handed people would have no trouble at all front flipping that. The locking mechanism, I've traditionally said no with frame locks, because it's designed to be operated with your right thumb. A friend of mine actually tells me that I'm overplaying that, and that he, as a lefty, doesn't have any trouble operating right-handed knives with his left thumb. So he says it's not a big deal, as I sometimes imply it is. So, okay, thanks for that correction. And the clip, no, that's one-sided. So it's not ambidextrous, but apparently it's not that much of a problem. Final manufacturing, Pena X series are designed by Pena in the United States. They're manufactured by Riet in China, and very high manufacturing tolerances. I'm impressed. Which kind of leads me into, what do I like about this knife? And I like a lot about it. Well, first of all, I love the size. I like small knives. And this one is just so small that it's cute. It's easy to stick anywhere, in pockets, non-threatening. And yet, despite being small, there's nothing flimsy or compromised about it. I love that. Nice mechanism. It is my easiest to operate, least scary front flipper. I have a couple of front flippers that actually scare me because I have trouble flipping them open without endangering my fingers. Not this one. Has a hardened lock insert, which I like, so the lock is secure and there's no lock stick there. It's just a real pleasure to use. The fit and finish on this knife are really impressive. I mentioned that before, but just look at this side here where the titanium frame and the micarta scales meet. There is no gap there. There is no edge there. That is just a perfect smooth surface. That is really well done. Another thing I like about the fit and finish is these Torex screws. The scale screws are quite a large Torex. What is that, a T8, I think? Bigger than they need to be. Big enough that the Torex hole becomes decorative. So these screws look like they have a decorative star in them. Of course, it isn't a decorative star, it's just the Torex hole, but it's pretty. The blade is perfectly centered. I guess I need to close to show that, don't I? The blade is perfectly centered, and having measured it, the blade is perfectly symmetric as well, which I really appreciate. As I've said before, it's a non-symmetric blade grind, which is pretty common on some higher volume production knives. It doesn't matter at all for cutting, but it just bothers me. It's a sign of attention to detail, and it does matter when you get around to sharpening. It's a lot easier to sharpen on a guided system a blade that is already symmetrically ground, so I appreciate that. I like the blade. The blade is not the pretty classic drop point that I generally prefer, but for this knife the shape works well. It's a great Amazon box cutting knife, and knife for scoring things, and of course the M390 steel is fantastic. Holding it and cutting is actually surprisingly comfortable. Now, it's a small knife. I only get sort of 2.5 fingers there, and yet it's a good comfortable grip. It's so small, the clip is so small that there aren't any hot spots, and there's comfortable thumb jimping right where you'd want it, and that is just generally a comfortable knife to hold for small tasks. I wouldn't want to carve logs for a shelter with this little knife, but for the sorts of things I do around an office, it's perfectly suited. What I don't like, not very much. The one thing I'll mention is there's room there for a nail nick, and I wish there was one, but there isn't. And that's mainly because some of my other front flippers scare me, and the only way I can open them is with a front flip, and I wish there was a nail nick. It's a small complaint, and in fact, with this knife, as a little secret, you can open it with 2 hands as though there was a nail nick. There's enough blade there to just grab with the meat of your thumb and finger and pull it open. So despite the lack of a nail nick, it can still be opened in that safe manner as though there was one. So that's a very small complaint. So we'll formalize that with my internationally unknown knife rating systems. We'll start with NTGK for non-threatening gentleman's knife, and do non-threatening first. The good news is the size, first of all. It's just too small to be threatening looking. That looks like a pocket knife, not a hunting knife and not a weapon. The micarta looks comfy. It looks casual and informal, and again, not at all like it was designed to project a threatening feeling. It's not at all tactical looking. Has pleasant lines. There's no silly barbs, reverse curves, zombie spikes, and so on it. The only bad news I can think of for non-threateningness is, as mentioned, officially you can only flip it open. And flicking a knife open tends to scare people who think that's a switchblade and don't understand the mechanical differences. Unofficially, you can open it with 2 hands, so that's going to be a very minor knock against it. I'd still give it an A+ for non-threatening. As a gentleman's knife, lots of good. The good is the size. It's cute. The appearance. It's just an elegant, compact looking knife. High-end materials, M390 steel, titanium. The subtle minimum decorations. Does say Pena X series here, and tiny letters there it says the steel, and that's all. It doesn't have the URL or the slogan of the company or its postal address, and the writing that is there is dark gray on satin, so it's subtle. It doesn't scream at you like an advertising slogan. And of course, the rare boutique brand. Even though this is a factory production knife, these are not easy to get. They don't have them everywhere. They're often out of stock. And of course, gentlemen's accessories are better when they're rare. The only negative I can think of is that it is a shallow carry clip, and I do prefer deep carry. That sticks out of your pocket. Now, the good news, countering that, is that it's so small and light that it is pretty friendly on the pocket. But it isn't unobtrusive. That much sticks out of your pocket. So I prefer a deep carry clip. But I'm still going to give it an A+ as a gentleman's knife because the goods are so good. So overall, an A+ as a non-threatening gentleman's knife. Well done. Now how about the KN rating, which is for what will knife nerds think? Well, the pros are, again, the respected boutique brand, Pena. People know that knife. Not as many people have one, so it's cool to have. The fit and finish is superb. The close tolerances, the centering, the mechanism is wonderful to work with. Just feels great. Great materials, good blade. All good things for knife nerds. Cons? I can't think of anything really for knife nerds. Now, I will say, there are, of course, knife nerds who are mountain men or mountain men wannabes and would say, this is not a suitable knife to fight off a bear while skinning a salmon. And I agree. And I don't care. Sorry, folks, you're not the type of knife nerd I hang around with. I can't think of any cons that would matter to my knife nerd friends. I'll give it an A plus as a KN rating. And finally, the CMR, the cut myself rating, it'll get an A. I've never cut myself, and unlike some of my front flippers, I probably never will, because the mechanism is just so simple and reliable. So in summary, my summary would be, if I gave a one-word summary, my summary would be, wow. I really like small knives, and I really like this one. This one really gets it all right. The materials are fantastic, the mechanism is fantastic, the fit and finish are great, and there just aren't any compromises that had to be made to make it small. So very well done, Mr. Pena. Thanks. I'm proud to own this thing. Thanks for following along, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.